If the lending process in real estate investing totally freaks you out, I'm here to tell you don't have to be freaked out about that. There is a strategy to working with lenders and working in the banking system to make sure that you're getting the best results from lenders, from appraisers, from everybody along that process. We've got a mapped out strategy that we can give you. I'm going to tell you a lot about it in this video. If you're new here and we haven't met, my name's Andrew Glisson. I scaled a real estate portfolio from zero to a couple of hundred properties in multiple cities over about a 4-year period of time, on the side as a hobby while working full time. So I'm here to tell you guys, we've made all the mistakes. We've figured out a lot that goes into this business and how to scale to a decent sized portfolio. And that's what we want to show you. If you're going to scale your business to new heights you didn't think was possible, then you're going to need to borrow money. If you're like me and you don't have unlimited money, you're going to have to put your money into real estate and recycle that money out of it. I have been successful in recycling my money dozens of times from 0 to 200 properties. A lot of times when I go in and buy a property and renovate it, I'm able to pull 100% of my cash out and put it to work somewhere else. And so I'm going to teach you how to do that. And it's going to take some time. We're gonna have to learn the process. We're gonna have to prepare ourselves. This is not, again, a get rich quick scheme. We're gonna start with the process. This is the lending process. This is a chart that I've created that shows you how to go from point A to point B in borrowing money from a bank, all through the underwriting process, the relationship building phase, the whole thing. And we're going to talk about in this section how to differentiate ourselves in this process. This is the normal lending and underwriting process, but we're going to insert ourselves in some key areas into this process so we can ensure that we have success with these lenders and that when we get our house appraised, it goes the right way, that we get the right product with the right lender. If we need to borrow as much money as we can from these lenders, that we can build that relationship in such a way where we have access to those funds. So I'm going to take you guys through each step of this process. And I'm going to talk briefly about the ways that we're going to insert ourselves into the process. These are the yellow highlighted ovals that we insert ourselves into this process. I'm going to talk about every single yellow highlighted oval in future videos. So I'm giving you an overview right now. I'm telling you when and how we're going to insert ourselves, but I'm going to go into a lot more detail on each of these ovals in future videos. Let's start with the first phase. This is the pre-underwriting phase where we meet our relationship manager at the bank or loan officer. We're going to introduce ourselves to this person. We're going to learn what the loan products the bank has to offer. We're going to talk about what might be good for us. They're going to take some information for us, run our credit, figure out what we qualify for, and then get ready to go to the next phase. So how do we insert ourselves into this process and differentiate ourselves early on? There's 2 ways that we're going to do it. The first way we're going to do it is by giving them a bank book, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. A bank book is an introductory document that introduces that bank to us and our company and what we're all about. It's a very quick and brief PowerPoint presentation, and I guarantee you when you present this to a banker, it is going to separate yourself in the mind of the banker immediately. It's going to put you alongside of them because what you want to do is you want to take the workload off of other people. So a relationship manager, one of their primary responsibilities is to get information about you and sensitize that information and send it off to the various departments in underwriting. And so the more work that you can do for all of these people along the way, including the relationship manager, you can sell yourself to that person, and that person's going to sell you internally into the bank. The second thing that we're going to do in this phase is we're going to give the relationship manager a personal financial statement that we've prepared. That's a very good personal financial statement that goes a long way in explaining everything about us personally. And we're going to give them a desktop underwriting document that goes even further, that it explains to that relationship manager cash flows at our company, all of our debt that we currently have, the profit and loss, what our projected revenue is on the portfolio or the single asset that we're trying to finance. And so they're going to build this internally in the bank, and they might give you a document to fill out that's called a personal financial statement because they realize most people don't have it, but we're going to do it before we even let the bank give it to us. We're going to do it for them, and it's going to be impressive, and it's going to set you apart. So we're going to talk about that personal financial statement and the desktop underwriting document. But that's how we're going to differentiate ourselves in this first little phase here on the pre-underwriting phase. There's 2 things: bank book, personal financial statement / desktop underwriting document. Normally, after we've been pre-approved, we're going to go to the next phase, which is underwriting. We either have a property picked out at this moment or we don't have a property picked out. I like to get into the underwriting phase before I have a property selected. You can have a property selected and get into underwriting, but the best way to do it is to not have a property selected and go into underwriting. So you can give the bank all of the information that they need to underwrite you and approve you to buy a property before you've got it selected. If you've got a property selected, you've got a closing timeline that's been established that you've agreed to, you've got to rush through the underwriting, you've got to take the worst deal, and we want to know that everything is ready to go and that we have the best loan product and the best deal before we get to the property selection phase. So what does the bank need? Let's assume for a second that we don't have a property selected. Let's go down that side of the chart real quick. What is the information that the bank needs from us in order to underwrite us properly for loan underwriting? They're going to send you an application and a document request, and it's going to be everything that you can think of. It's going to be an application with your social security number. They need your identification. They're going to ask you about liabilities. They're going to ask you about assets. They're going to ask for tax returns. You should give tax returns to the bank, but they're going to ask for those tax returns from the IRS anyway and make you sign a document that they can get them directly, which is fine, but we want to give them to the bank anyway. We want to collect a lot of this data that we know the bank's going to ask for first. You can see all the data that they need in this chart, and we're going to want to give that to the bank early so we can do their job for them. Again, we want to overwhelm the bank with organization and information from us so we make their job easy so they want to work with us, and we're trying to sell everybody along the way, including the loan underwriter, on why they should do business with us. Once we give them all that packet of information, they're going to stop and they're going to do a desktop underwriting profile on us, which is great because we've already done that for them. We built a desktop underwriting program that we're going to give them. It's an Excel spreadsheet you can download in this video, as well as the personal financial statement we're going to get into. We're going to give these documents to them early, so we've done a lot of this work for them before we even get to this phase. When I pass through the desktop underwriting phase, that's the time that I feel the most powerful. I can go and give somebody a proof of funds letter or a pre-approval letter to go and make offers on houses. And once I do select a house, that's when I'm going to lock my rate in. The bank's going to give me a good faith estimate on what this thing's going to cost, and we are off to the races. Once our rate's locked, once our good faith estimate is set, we go through the underwriting phase on the property. They're going to ask for the lease. They're going to research the taxes. They're going to look at any deed restrictions. They're going to look at an HOA. Once that's all done, we're going to move and establish a closing date. The bank is going to give us a date that they think they can work through this underwriting process and close this loan. Now, if we've done a lot of work before this and we've given the bank tons of information on us, tons of information on the property, they don't have a lot to ask us, it's going to speed this process along. So if you're trying to be competitive with a seller and you're trying to establish with a seller that you can close this property quick, if you've already done a lot of this work for the bank before you get to the point where the bank is telling you what the closing date's going to be, then your closing date that you're trying to agree to, which is fast, the bank can accommodate that. So we want to prepare before we get to this point, because a lot of times when a closing date is set, it's because an underwriter says, I think it's going to take me this amount of time to work through this document prep in order to close this loan. So if we've done a lot of that work before we get to this point, then we can accelerate the closing timeline, which makes you more competitive when you're trying to buy houses. So don't forget that. We want to do a lot of this work in advance. And we want to understand from a relationship manager early on in the yellow phase. Before we get to the blue phase, we want to understand from that relationship manager, help us make this process easier for underwriting. What are all the documents that you need? Are there any internal banking documents that I can fill out ahead of time so we can move this process along quickly? Also ask that banker, because this is important. A lot of these documents will expire. So if you don't have a property that you've selected yet, you can't just have a pre-approval letter out in perpetuity, because your personal financial situation changes over time. So when do those documents need to be refreshed? How often? If you know you want to work with this bank and the bank's easy to work with and they want to work with you, well then let's get this process done and get all the information and understand that we're going to have to refresh these documents at certain intervals. For a couple of banks that I work with, they need documents once a quarter. And so I'm sending documents to banks once a quarter so it's on file and ready to go. And it's awesome because a lot of times when I need to go close a new loan or I need to pull a line of credit out of the bank or something like that, they don't even need tax returns. They don't need personal financial statements because they already have it on file. So you guys have got to understand how often these documents get refreshed, have everything done with underwriting and everything that they need to them so we can establish this closing date and be competitive. So what happens after we get the closing date done? Well, we're going to have to pay some fees. We got to get an appraisal done. We got to schedule that appraisal. So we have to pay for an appraisal fee. We have to pay for a flood certificate because the bank's got to research if this property's in a flood zone. And you've already done your homework. So if you have, you can look up and see if the property's in the flood zone. Give the banker that information so they can certify what you're giving them that's not a flood zone. A little bit of sidebar, I don't like buying properties in a flood zone. Flood insurance is expensive, and I don't like to add unnecessary costs because it impacts my P&L. So we're gonna have to pay for the flood certificate. We're gonna have to pay for the appraisal. Once you pay those fees, the closing attorney is gonna order title work. The bank is gonna order the appraisal, and you are gonna schedule insurance and utilities to get turned on and transferred to your name. The next phase is the appraisal process. And this is the next time that we're gonna insert ourselves into this process. This is a critical moment. And so let's move on to the appraisal phase and talk about what we're gonna do to differentiate ourselves in that process. The normal appraisal process is a bank orders an appraisal in a blind process from 3 different pre-approved appraisers and then chooses the cheapest and maybe gives you the option on, here's the pricing, you choose who you want to work with. They're not going to tell you who it is, but they're going to give you the pricing. And so that's how it happens. You say, I'll take the guy that's $500. It goes through the appraisal process, and then you get your appraisal back. That's it. You have no input in that whole process. That's how the normal appraisal process works. Let's talk about how I've re-engineered the appraisal process so I can ensure that the outcome is favorable and achieves the goals that I'm trying to hit for my property that I've selected I'm trying to buy. It's important that our ARV, our after repair value, matches our appraisal value, or we do better. Our appraisal does better than our ARV. I routinely get my appraisals back and they are better than my ARV, and that helps me when I'm trying to pull as much cash out of this property as I possibly can. I don't want to leave any money behind. So if I'm going to pull all my money back, then I've got to hit a good appraisal. So how do I do it? There's a few ways that we're going to insert ourselves into this process. The first thing that we're going to do is you are going to download the template here called Appraisal Guide, and you are going to fill this out for the portfolio you're trying to refinance or buy, or the single property that you're trying to refinance or buy. That appraisal guide is going to be key in helping you achieve the appraisal that you need, because you're going to, again, do a lot of the work ahead of time for the appraiser. And you're going to give that document to your relationship manager at the bank, you're going to give it to the underwriting manager at the bank, and you're going to give it to the appraiser. Because we want to establish the value in the neighborhood. We've done our homework. We know what the values are in this neighborhood. And we know what the comps are that we're trying to compare this property to. And so when we do this and we give this document to the bank, it's going to make us powerful because we've done our homework. And the bank already knows we do our homework because we've given them a lot of documents and we've prepared them before we've gotten to this point on how good of an operator we are. So the appraisal guide is going to be just as professional as everything the bank has seen from us. So if the appraiser comes back and gives you values that are a lot lower than what's on this appraisal guide, or they don't choose the comps that you've chosen that are good comps, then they're going to look bad in the eyes of the bank, and that's not what they want to do because they want a good relationship with the bank. So we want to insert ourselves very early on in the process before the appraiser even gets the order. We want him to get information about us and about what we think the value is, and we're going to do that by doing the appraisal guide, which we'll talk about in a few videos. All right, guys, once we've established our appraisal guide and we've socialized that internally at the bank, we're going to ask the bank to introduce us to the appraiser. I want to meet the appraiser. I want to walk them through the property or properties that I'm trying to refinance. I want to meet with that person so I can sell that appraiser on why they should like me, on why they should value my property the way I think that I should get my property valued. I'm not going to talk a lot about valuation with the appraiser, but I'm going to talk about the great things that I'm doing, the great things my company is doing. I am going to give them my appraisal guide when we're there. I might give them my design book. I might give them my materials list. I'm going to overwhelm this appraiser with what I'm doing and why they should like me and my property. And that's going to be a differentiating point because nobody meets with the appraiser. But look, they've got to get in your property anyway, right? And so instead of sending them a key box code and letting them just go in and appraise it by themselves, go with them. You can do that. I have driven my appraiser around when I have been financing portfolios and I'm doing 25 houses and the appraiser needs to look at least a third of them because they have these guides on how many properties they need to see if you're doing like a portfolio refinance. I'll drive them around, jump in the car, let's go. And we get to talk about their family, we get to talk about what their pets' names are. I mean, you want to be friends with these people so they can give you good valuations, they can like you, and they can align themselves with you. And if they see that you're a good operator and they're going to know that the bank is going to want to do business with you and have a big portfolio with you, then the good chance is they're going to see you again. Okay, so we want to meet our appraiser. We want to get to know those people, and we want to give them all the information that we can about our company. Here's where we get appraised. The value's got to come back. This is a process stop right here. You can see the stop sign. We get appraised. Two things are going to happen. The appraisal is going to get met, and you're going to move on to the next phase, or the appraisal is not going to get met. If the appraisal doesn't get met, you've got a couple options, okay? You can stop the process and walk away from the property. I don't like doing that. If I like the property, I'm going to challenge that appraisal. So a lot of people don't realize that you can go in and challenge an appraisal. You can get what's called a broker's priced opinion. A broker's priced opinion is an official opinion from a broker signed off on that the target house, the property in question, is worth this. And they give you comps to support that. It's a very well-written document. And we challenge that appraisal. And we can challenge it with that broker's priced opinion. Sometimes the broker's priced opinion will win. The appraiser doesn't like to get challenged because it makes him look like, or her, they don't know what they're doing. And I'm going to give you a little hint. Most appraisers don't know what they're doing. So you have to be willing to challenge these appraisals. You have to be willing to go in with a broker's priced opinion and stand behind your valuation. If it's bad enough and the appraiser doesn't agree with you, you can cancel that and buy another appraisal. Okay? So we're going to challenge it. And if we challenge it with a BPO, it's called a broker's priced opinions, a BPO. If we challenge it with a BPO and the appraiser stands by their decision on what they valued that, then you can either stop the process and move on and not buy that property, or you can do what I like to do and hire another appraiser and go through the whole process again. You don't have to accept a bad appraisal. You can have that appraisal tossed and you can hire another appraiser to come in and do another appraisal. It's another $400. But if the property is worth it to you, then you might want to go and take that step and get another appraisal so you can get your valuation if you like that property. The appraisal is a key step in the whole process. You guys have worked very hard at this point to build a relationship with a relationship manager at the bank. You've worked really hard to build a relationship with underwriting, to give them all these documents. You've worked really hard to find good properties that you want to buy. You have to appraise. And so you want to insert yourself into that appraisal process. It's the only way sometimes to get the value that you need. So don't neglect the appraisal process. I'm going to talk more about the appraisal process in a future video. And we're going to get into that appraisal guide that we give everybody and exactly what we need to put on there and how we need to build that. But I want you guys to understand a key point about appraisers. You can become an appraiser with 75 hours of continuing education and 0 real estate experience at all. 0. You can become an appraiser and have no idea about the real estate market at all. They'll give you an appraisal license. So you're dealing with somebody who's establishing the value of your property, potentially that just got into the business yesterday and has never appraised a piece of property before in their life. So I'm going to talk to you, and we're going to get into this and how to ask our banker if they've qualified appraisers and things like that. But I want you guys to realize that the bottleneck in real estate, a lot of times in single family homes, is on the appraiser. They're the bottleneck. They stop properties from transacting. You can be the smartest person in the world. You can have a private equity background or an investment banking background, and you can pinpoint exactly what the value of this house is and do your diligence and know what it's worth and know what you want to pay for it, and then get stuck by an appraiser who took a class last week and got their license yesterday. So we've got to work hard on this process, guys. This is a fundamental piece of the real estate business and one that has caused me the most angst. I did not do appraisals right and the banking process right in the beginning. I firmly believe I would have 500 properties right now instead of the 200 that I do have if somebody had told me how to run this appraisal process more efficiently in the beginning. I want you guys to remember this as a key part in the whole banking process we're going to talk more about, but let's assume that we hit our value and let's move on to the next step in the underwriting process because we got to buy this house. The next 2 steps are easy, guys. We've approved everything. The title came back clear. We got our appraisal. Our loan's approved. We're good to go. It kicks it off to the closing attorney. The funds are released. We close on that property. That property is ours. And so we've inserted ourselves into this process a number of places to get to where we finally close on this property. Now we're going to dig in. Let's dig into these differentiating points and talk about all these elements where we insert ourselves into this process. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you found that video helpful, I hope you'll like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to our content to get updates on future videos. And if you're interested in taking a deeper dive into real estate investing, then I hope you'll look up our mentorship program at thevictorystrategy.com.